everybody! I'm shouting again. That's probably the worst shout I've ever done on this channel. But why am I shouting? Because this video, the video you're watching right now, is the 500th video on my channel, right? You know, 2 years ago when I was bored in COVID and I thought I'd do a Mahavishnu Orchestra top 10, I did not know it would end up with 500 videos. Can you get your head around that? 500 videos. It's a morass, right? It's a huge, like, ocean of me. Oh, pure beauty. And to celebrate the 500th episode, I thought, how can I celebrate it? I thought, I'm going to do my 500 favourite artists, bands, musicians for every single style of music, the whole lot, and I'm going to rank them up to number one. It's going to be my list, it's going to be my version of the greatest. So I decided to do that. I started to write the list, right? I got to 100. I cannot believe how big 500 is. 500 is a big number. I cannot believe I've sat in here 500 times talking to this camera and reaching all the tens of thousands of people that now watch my channel. Isn't it a wonderful thing? I'm very excited. The 500th episode, right? The 500 episodes. I might even put in some fireworks here or something, but I probably won't. Right, so I have got a list of 100 here. I'm going to have to go fast through this list. I ain't going to be doing much talking. I'll say one comment on each of these choices and I'll move on, right? I might put some photographs. So I don't want to put 100 photographs. I'll be editing there all day, right? You know, I'm on a production line. That's how I've got to 500. 500. I cannot get my head around it. I'm starting to forget what I've done. Now, there's nobody, because see, I don't watch my videos. Is there someone who's watched all 500? Is there? There can't be. It's an entity that no one can actually get their arms around now. I love that. I love the epic. I love the epic. Anyway, let's start. So at number 100 on my list of the 100 greatest artists of all time, according to me, I have Public Enemy. Right, I love Public Enemy, I love rap, I love hip hop, and I know a lot of you guys don't. Public Enemy were like one of the first rap bands that made me realise how serious rap was. It sounded like rock music to me. It was visceral and exciting. I was listening to a lot of GRP jazz at the time, and I remember hearing Public Enemy's second album. I actually heard the track off the first album. If I talk like this is going to be 2 hours long. So I heard that album, it was absolutely fantastic. So that's who I've got at number 100. I've never said that before, number 100, Public Enemy. 99, Herman Zabel. Recently discovered by me with his self-titled album. I've been listening to it. It really is one of the greatest progressive or jazz rock or jazz albums of all time. Right, a lot of people have said on this channel, oh, it's very good, but it's not that good. It really is. Go and listen to it. You have to hear it from his point of view. And if you go, well, it just sounds a bit like Frank Zappa. Yeah, it does, right? And a lot of music sounds like a lot of other music, but if you actually put your head in and listen to what's going on, it's an incredible album. Herman Zabel disappeared off the face of the planet. If you want to know more about that story, I've got a whole video on it. And apparently he could well be sitting in a cave somewhere outside Jerusalem thinking he's Jesus. Not the best place to be at the moment, I don't think. So anyway, Herman Zabel at number 99. Right, I've got to have a Delta blues guitarist on there. So Robert Johnson, shall I put Robert Johnson on? No, I'm going to go to the daddy of them all. At 98, I've put Charlie Patton. And the reason I put Charlie Patton is because I do really love Charlie Patton stuff. I can hear the dirty roots of rock and roll in his approach. And I also hear the door to the void, you know. It's like we don't know what happens before him. He could have well have been taught by a guy called Henry Sloan on a plantation in the 1910s, and Henry Sloan could have well have been that guitarist that was playing his guitar with a knife that W.C. Handy saw in 1905. We're right into the weeds, we're right into the depths, the dark esoteric depths of this music we all love. So it's got to be, for me, I love Blind Lemon Jefferson, I love Charlie Patton, I love all these players, but for me it's Charlie Patton, and I put him in at number 98. Number 97, Tina Turner. One of the greatest voices. I can listen to anything by Tina Turner, even if some of her 80s schlocky pop comes on, like Simply the Best. I hear Tina's voice, I absolutely love it. She's recently left us. I think she gets forgotten a little bit in the sort of Aretha Franklin, you know, Whitney Houston world. She's as great as all of those. An incredible musician that seems to span between soul, rhythm and blues and rock music, and she could rock. Tina. Well, we love you, Tina, and you're much missed. Number 96, I have Focus. You know, probably the greatest proper progressive rock band from Europe. You know, one that sounds like a progressive rock band and doesn't sound like some krautrock weird, you know, avant rock band, you know, which I love as well. But Focus I really love. Haven't listened to them enough. I've been listening to them more in recent times. Number 95, I have Whitesnake. Whitesnake are one of the bands that got me into music in 1980 when they did released Fall for Your Loving. I saw David Coverdale on Top of the Pops, and they are a good, solid rhythm and blues band. And if you want to learn how to play music, go and listen to Whitesnake. David Coverdale, treble singer, Ian Paice's lovely drumming, and the late, great Bernie Marsden, who passed away a few weeks ago. And holding hand in hand with Whitesnake and the other sort of post Deep Purple band, it's at number 4. I have Rainbow. Ritchie Blackmore's Rainbow. You know, my hero when I started playing was Cozy Powell. You know, when I heard Rainbow Rising, that was one of the doors to progressive rock. Rainbow, incredible band that go from making sort of the roots of progressive rock metal, progressive metal, and the roots of neoclassical metal. And they go from that to making some fantastic pop songs. And if, you know, All Night Long or Since It Begun or I Surrender come on the radio, I turn that radio up, they are monsters. Incredible singers in that band, absolutely brilliant. Number 93, I have McCoy Tyner. McCoy Tyner was a pianist in John Coltrane's quartet, and he made some incredible albums in the 70s. Absolutely incredible. I've talked about the album Sahara, who's one of my favourite jazz albums in history. McCoy Tyner, and number 93. Number 92, I have Mike Stern, the guitarist that started off in Billy Cobham's band, and I think he played in Blood, Sweat and Tears. Then he came to prominence in Miles Davis' band, playing on Miles' comeback album, and there's a track on that album called Fat Time, and it has one of the greatest guitar solos in history. Mike Stern has gone on to really be one of the most preeminent, you know, jazz rock guitarists of the last 40 years. Good old Mike Stern. Number 91, Thin Lizzy. You know, I love a good rock band, and I think Thin Lizzy, they don't get mentioned enough. The incredible songs they're singing of Phil Lynott, that beautiful twin lead guitar, whether it be Brian Robertson, Scott Gorham or Gary Moore, and the incredible rock drumming of Brian Downey. People going about John Bonham and Ian Pace and even Bill Ward, you know, and all these people. Tommy Campbell, is it? No, not Tommy Campbell's John McGoughlin's drummer. Who's the drummer that played with the Aussie? Tommy Aldrich. You know, they talk about the other incredible rock drummers, but for me, no one mentions Brian Downey. He was a monster. And Thin Lizzy at number 91 were a big influence on Iron Maiden. I had to pick a new wave of British heavy metal band. Which one? I thought, shall I pick Angel Witch? Shall I pick, shall I pick a Diamond Head? No, I thought, let's go with the kings of new wave of British heavy metal, Iron Maiden. Love Iron Maiden, but especially the Paul Di'Anno stuff. I am one of those people. At number 89, I've only got through 10. Oh, I'm going to be here a while, aren't I? Right, number 89, I got Emerson, Lake and Palmer. I love ELP, they're great, they're not one of my favourite rock bands. If you want to know my opinion on ELP, it's far too complex for me to explain here, and I've been through it. You know, I have bared my soul when it comes to ELP after I did my top 20 greatest progressive rock bands and got to number 2 and realised I hadn't even counted ELP. So I did a video goes, why do you always not think about ELP? What's in my mind that makes me not think about them? Well, this video, I'm not going to sit here. You can just go back and search Andy Edwards ELP and you can go and search the videos where I talked about that. Number 88, Eric Dolphy. One of the great soloists, one of the great visionaries of jazz. Of course, I came to him when he was playing with the John Coltrane Quartet. And then I checked out albums like Out to Lunch. An incredible player, incredible stuff with Charlie Mingus as well. Really brilliant saxophone player. Died far too young in 1964. You know, should have been around for longer. Right, at number 87, Bill Bruford. Right, Bill Bruford has to be on the list as an artist because those albums, One of a Kind and Feels Good to Me, are two of the greatest progressive rock albums ever made. Right, with Alan Holdsworth, incredible compositions, and it was an incredible band. UK is on my list. They're the next one on my list at number 86, another incredible band. And between UK and Bill Bruford's band, you know, there's sort of 4 or 5 albums there, which I think are some of the greatest later 70s progressive rock bands, if not the greatest late 70s progressive rock albums for me. Number 85, I've got Buddy Rich. Buddy Rich is the greatest drummer of all time in many people's minds, but in the 70s, he crossed over to fusion with albums like The Raw of 74 with the different drummer and those albums, I just absolutely love them. They are there in my list of the great Fusion albums. So if you're a Fusion fan, go and check out A Different Drummer by Buddy Rich. Incredible. Number 84, I've got John Lydon, Public Image Limited and the Sex Pistols, right? I will do a video on that because I know a lot of people here will be going, oh, I'm a progger and I don't like that. Right, John Lydon is one of the great poets of English culture. He's one of the great musicians. He's a visionary. He really is. And Sex Pistols at the time were marketed by Malcolm McLaren as a bit of a sort of, you know, that they were like ironically sort of taking the piss really, you know, with what they were doing. But they weren't. They were like an average rock band that were made sublime by John Lydon. And John Lydon is an incredible musician. I got 3 Johns coming up. So that's the first John on number 84. At number 83, I have John Zorn. The sort of avant-garde 1980s postmodernist, you know, cut-up technique saxophone player who's got a body of work which is incredible, challenging and incredible. I love the guy. He produced Mr. Bungle as well. What can I say about John Zorn? And at number 82, I have John Serry, a guy that I've discovered through this channel. John Serry made 2 albums, Exhibit and Jazzes, at the turn of the 70s, 80s, and they're 2 of the greatest fusion albums of all time. And I thought I'm going to put him on my list. I could sit quite happy with those 2 albums on a desert island and not have another album. They do everything for me. Right, number 81, I have Lenny White. Lenny White's late 70s albums, especially Venusian Summer and Big City, but also Astral Pirates and the one that's got Chaka Khan on, I can't remember now. No, ain't going to come to me. Oh, come on. No. There's some of my favourite late 70s fusion albums. Venusian Summer, I believe, to be one of the greatest fusion albums. And I would rate that higher than any Return to Forever album. I know I shouldn't be saying it, but I do. So, number 80, I have Living Colour. Living Colour, that came from Vernon Reid, who did come up in that sort of avant-garde jazz punk scene, playing in Ronald Shannon Jackson's band, the Decoding Society. Then he forms a metal band, and they are perhaps the greatest metal band of all time, filled with all sorts of jazz virtuosity. And Vernon Reid was very, very influential because that way of playing guitar, that brutal, you know, thrashy alternate pick and way of playing guitar is incredible. As was another band that emerged at that time, Fishbone. Fishbone was sort of Red Hot Chili Peppers crossed with a soul band, crossed with a reggae band, and crossed with King Oliver's, you know, 1920s Dixieland jazz band. That's Fishbone are one of the greatest bands of all time. I've only got my number 79 because there's a lot of great artists here, but I absolutely love Fishbone and I love Mr. Bungle, which is the sort of flip side of Faith No More, Mike Patton's avant-garde, John Zorn-esque, you know, bizarre band. Mr. Bungle is like insane, absolutely insane. Big influence on Avenged Sevenfold's latest album, I thought. I'm going to keep going. At number 77, I've got Lynyrd Skynyrd. I've got to have a bit of big Southern Boogie on there. I like a bit of ZZ Top 38 Special, but for me, the album is pronounced Lynyrd Skynyrd, which is Lynyrd Skynyrd's first album. I absolutely love that album. I love everything about it. It just sounds like fantastic. I don't need Aerosmith. For me, it's Lynyrd Skynyrd. I love him. Number 76, Steve Coleman on the whole M bass. I've got all of that at number 76. Steve Coleman is like the John Coltrane of the last 40 years. He is a father figure to a different way of playing jazz, which is fusion-esque. It's also funk-esque, hip-hop-esque. Steve Coleman's M bass, it hasn't had the coverage, but when we look at a lot of the stuff that's going on in jazz today, especially the stuff that's all coming through YouTube, it's Steve Coleman. So that's who I've got number 76. Number 75, the Queen of Neo Soul, Erykah Badu. I wanted to put Jill Scott on, but I think as time's gone on, Erykah Badu's the coolest. She's got the coolest voice, she's got the coolest grooves. She is just something else. She's strange and weird and compelling and beautiful, and we love you, Erykah. And who have I got next to Erykah Badu at number 74? I've got Anthrax, my favourite of the big thrash metal bands of the 80s. They had a sense of humour, they had a lightness of touch, they had like a bizarre set of influences, and they were great players, and Charmick Benante was just such an incredible drummer, and he's probably the guy that invented the blast beat. And so there we have it in number 74, Anthrax. Number 73, I've got Radiohead. I love Radiohead. OK Computer, Kid A, and the Amnesiac. Those three albums are absolutely incredible progressive rock albums. Sorry, but they are. So that's what we've got at number 73. My God, this is going to take a while. Number 72, the King of Pop, Michael Jackson. Love Michael Jackson. Off the Wall, Thriller, absolutely incredible. And there's tracks on all the other albums. There's a track called Break of Dawn. It might be off History. That's my favourite Michael Jackson song. The vocals and the production and the chord sequences are absolutely beautiful. Break of Dawn, my favourite Michael Jackson track. At number 71, we have Jethro Tull. Always shoved to the side in progressive rock, which is strange because they sold millions and millions of albums, and they sold out stadiums. They were a really big band, and surprising when they sort of pulled together this sort of medieval English sort of country gent aesthetic into prog more than anybody else, and made some of the most complex, weird, sort of gentle giant-esque prog, but was so much more successful. I think it could well be down to Ian Anderson's incredible Image, which had an influence, as can be seen on John Lydon with the Sex Pistols to try and pull all this list together. So at number 70 we have Don Ellis. Don Ellis emerged with a big band in the late 60s. I think they're the first important fusion band. They brought in electronics, rock beats, odd time signature, Indian scales, all that. Absolutely incredible. If you haven't heard Electric Bath, that came out in 1967, you haven't lived. Go and check that album out. Don Ellis. I interviewed their drummer Ralph Humphrey, his drummer, just a few weeks before he passed away. Very moving interview. So if you want to know more about Don Ellis, go and check that interview out. I am moving on now from Don Ellis to number 69, Chaka Khan. Chaka Khan could well be my favourite singer. What can I say? No one can beat Chaka Khan. No one can sing like her. No one can hit those notes. No one's got that tone. No one's got that looks. Nobody can perform on stage like that. She is a magnetic megastar. And that Sugar track that she came out a few years ago, that's like the best pop song to come out in the last 5 years. If it was 5 years ago, could be longer than that. But anyway, I love it. I love it. I love it. Number 68, Cream. Invented rock music. Ginger Baker, Eric Clapton, Jack Bruce. What are we going to say? And number 67, Prince. I just love Prince. The multi-instrumentalist, genius songwriter that pulls P-Funk, that pulls sort of Stevie Wonder, that pulls electronic sort of new wave music, that pulls rock music in, and this massive stew, this huge discography that you'll never really get through, all full of genius records with his imprint, which it's Prince. What a man. At number 66, Oscar Peterson. I grew up listening to Oscar Peterson, jazz pianist from Canada. Albums like Night Train were my sort of... it was the milk, the jazz milk. Oh, that doesn't sound right. It was the milk from which I'm going to move on. I'm going to move on to number 65. I've got Billie Holiday. One of the greatest singer. I'm saying they're all great. These are all great. Billie Holiday, she wrote and performed perhaps the greatest song in history, Strange Fruit. That delicate but assured voice, which acts as almost a counterweight to the singer I've got at number 64, which is Ella Fitzgerald. The most beautiful voice in music, Ella Fitzgerald, and their ability to act like a horn, like an instrument, and scat is incredible. Number 63, Jean-Luc Ponty. I've only really recently got. This is a confession. I've only really recently got into Jean-Luc Ponty's late 70s albums. They're part of the Mahavishnu Orchestra legacy. They're absolutely incredible. I'm sure in a couple of years' time, he'll be even higher. I love Jean-Luc Ponty. I love him with the Mahavishnu. I love him with Frank Zappa. I think he's a bit low on my list, but he's there, number 63. Pipped to the Post by Steve Wilson, stroke Porcupine Tree. I think Steve Wilson is the saviour of prog. He's really, produced some aesthetically important progressive rock albums over the last 20 years, or even maybe the last 30 years. Very important musician. That's who I've got number 62. If you want to know more about my opinions about Steve Wilson, I've just reviewed the Harmony Codex by him. Right, number 61, Michelle Ndegeocello. Michelle Ndegeocello is a sort of multi-instrumentalist singer, rapper, songwriter. She's based in like soul, funk, hip hop, rock, John Coltrane-esque jazz. She was discovered by Madonna and put out on her label. I think Meshell Ndegeocello is one of the greatest artists to emerge from in the last 30 years. See how serious I've got. When I said that Erykah Badu is the queen of neo soul, Meshell Ndegeocello cannot be reined in by the term neo soul. So that's why I didn't say it. So number 60, I have Ornette Coleman and Primetime. I'm a big Ornette Coleman fan, but especially his jazz rock fusion band Primetime. I've been listening to them today. Absolutely incredible, avant-garde, melodic jazz rock funk. Absolutely incredible. I've been thinking of doing a video on Primetime, and I will. I think we've got to talk about them. If you are a Fusion fan and you haven't checked out Primetime, go and check them out. They are unbelievable when they don't get mentioned. Number 59, I have the British ska band Madness. I love the specials. I love the selector. It was the music that came around when I came to sort of fruition as a musician. And as time has gone back, I go back to Madness's songs, and that is an example of incredible songwriting. Our House, Baggy Trousers, Night Boat to Cairo, all those, My Girl's Mad at Me. It's brilliant songwriting, brilliantly arranged, and you cannot believe the sophistication of a bunch of like working class kids from London that can come up with stuff that is so poppy and yet so avant-garde. I Like Driving in My Car is bizarre. It's bizarre. It's like somewhere between like a comedy song by Bernard Cribbins and John Cage. I'm going to move on then. Right, number 58, Larry Coryell and the 11th House. Larry Coryell's incredible guitar player, one of the architects of jazz rock. Patchy discography, I'm afraid, but not when it comes to the 11th House, which is some of the greatest jazz rock albums of all time. So they come at number 58. At number 57, Jaco Pastorius. Jaco Pastorius is the most charismatic musician to have come out of the jazz rock music. He changes the sound of the bass, he changes technically how the bass played, and he's one of the greatest composers of the jazz rock era that has written stuff that has gone on to become jazz rock standards. At number 56, I have Deep Purple. I'm surprisingly low on the list. I like Deep Purple. There's things about them I don't like. There's things about them I absolutely love. They brought a double album out in the 80s called Deep Purple in Concert, which was a collection of BBC recordings, and that album changed my life far more than Made in Japan. If you want to check them out, you need to go and get a live album. All the live albums are incredible. I do think some of the studio albums are a little bit patchy, but Deep Purple in Rock is one of the greatest albums ever made, and that along with Black Sabbath's first album, Usher in heavy metal, and probably Uriah Heep's very humble, very heavy album. They're the trio. Uriah Heep didn't make my list, I'm afraid. Number 55, we've got Pink Floyd. Pink Floyd, I do love them. When they're at their best, I love them. I do love them. Love the Syd Barrett stuff. Love the experimental stuff that follows in after that. Dark Side of the Moon is one of the greatest albums ever made. Wish You Were Here is, I don't know, it's alright. Animals is good, I Don't Like the Wall, and then we get that sort of move towards sort of, Jeremy Clarkson rock with a lovely guitar solos from Dave Gilmour. And it's not my thing, but in terms of, when I did my history of progressive rock, you could almost use Pink Floyd as a figurehead, as the summit of everything that happens in the history of progressive rock as you see them move through it. So they're a very important band. I do love them. 50th anniversary of Dark Side of the Moon. I'm sure all you proggers have forked out like, what is it, 580 quid for the box set of all the same stuff you've had with loads of other stuff that you don't want, but you feel like you should buy it because you're a completist, and they know the prog fans are like that. At number 54, I have the Beatles. What am I supposed to say? I love the Beatles. Everyone loves the Beatles. If you don't love the Beatles, then you probably like the Rolling Stones, and I don't like the Rolling Stones, right? But I like the Beatles. But these tracks by the Rolling Stones I really like. Gimme Shelter's amazing, and all that psychedelic stuff they did. I love all that. I do like the Rolling Stones, but the Beatles I absolutely love. I can go and put any album on the Beatles and I love them. The roots are progressive rock, the roots of everything. I better get going a bit faster, right? Where are we? So number 53, Duke Ellington. Duke Ellington is one of those musicians that turned jazz into an art form, right? And he brought a respect to jazz that wasn't there before. He brought a compositional gravitas and weight to jazz. He's probably in the top 3 most important musicians of the 20th century. What else do you want? I've only got him down at, where have I got him? Where have you gone? Where are we? Duke Ellington, number 53. Number 52, Thelonious Monk. Right, an architect of bebop that then takes jazz and goes on his own journey, creates his own way of playing jazz. We all know what Thelonious Monk is, and it's Thelonious Monk. He's imprinted his personality, and his personality is sort of quirky and thoughtful and a bit obscure. And anyone who plays like that, his use of space, his use of the blues, and very influenced by Duke Ellington. And I absolutely love Thelonious Monk. His album with John Coltrane is one of the greatest jazz albums ever made, as is The Genius of Thelonious Monk, as is his solo piano album. Absolutely brilliant. Right, Thelonious Monk. Number 51, Earth, Wind and Fire. They start off as a jazz rock band, you know, they're a fusion band, and then they get funkier and funkier, and then they get poppier and poppier, and you think it should be terrible, but it's not. September. If September comes on the radio, I absolutely love it. And it's not just some shallow, riffy groove. September has got these sophisticated chord changes moving all over the place, but it's still funky. There's very few artists that can do that. Steve Wonder can do it, and Earth, Wind and Fire can do it. An incredible band, and when I listen to them, I think, you know, this is made in the 70s, they're really playing this. It's astonishing. Earth, Wind and Fire. Number 50, Art Tatum, the great jazz virtuoso, probably the greatest virtuoso of the 20th century. Emerges in the 1930s and astonishes all the classical pianists. If you want to know about Art Tatum, there's an interview between Oscar Peterson and Count Basie, and Count Basie questions Oscar Peterson about Art Tatum, and you will learn more about him watching that video than anything else. So I will move on. Number 49, my Lord and Master, salute Narada Michael Walden. That's who I've got, number 49. And I love the guy. He's now a friend of the channel. He looks in, and I've got him at halfway through my list, and I hope he realises the people he's got above him. And there's a few that shouldn't be. It's all like, I look at this, there's a few that shouldn't be above him, but that's the way the list came out. Number 47, Modern Jazz Quartet, the sort of chamber jazz trio, quartet, because they're called Modern Jazz Quartet. I'm going as fast as I can, I'm tripping over myself, I'm half an hour, and I'm halfway, this is going to be an hour long. Oh, bloody hell. Right, so yeah, where were we? Modern Jazz Quartet, intelligent chamber jazz, but not cerebral, like everybody thinks, because they had one of the hottest players of all time, probably the hottest vibraphone player. And so the vibraphone, which sits in this tinkly space within this chamber thing, but the blues of Milt Jackson. Can you think of a vibraphone player more bluesy than Milt Jackson? Right, he had a groove, and that balance makes Modern Jazz Quartet one of the great bands of all time. One of the great jazz groups. Number 46, Squarepusher. The post-drum and bass, Jacko-inspired bass player who makes some of the most insane music on the planet. If you don't know who Squarepusher is and you're a jazz fusion fan, go and check him out, but approach him with caution. Some of the albums aren't like that. He's made straight dance music albums. He made an album called Music Is Rotted One Note, which is like sort of Bitches Brew and free jazz, and it's just bonkers. Squarepusher, absolutely love the guy. Number 45, Noah and Louis Cole. I wanted somebody new on the list. They are my favourite band that are around at the moment. Absolutely incredible, virtuoso, funky, incredible improvisation, great songwriting, sense of humour, know how the internet works. Noah and Louis Cole. Number 44, P-Funk, Funkadelic and Parliament, George Clinton. I picked them all up and I've dropped them in there. I love P-Funk. My favourite albums of the sort of P-Funk artists are probably the Bootsy Collins albums, but I put them all in there together. So we got P-Funk at number 44. Number 43, the Brecker brothers, and this includes Randy Brecker and Michael Brecker. Michael Brecker is probably the greatest soloist of the last 40 years, always in there. And the Brecker brothers make incredibly funky, intense, hyper-arranged, complex, and yet catchy jazz rock. They are And it's almost like if you hear a jazz rock band now, they don't sound like the Mavis Structure, they don't sound like Return to Free, they don't even sound like Weather Report. Most of the time they sound like the Brecker Brothers, and no one's acknowledged that influence. At number 42, I have Dave Brubeck. I was brought up on Dave Brubeck, one of the great 1950s jazz groups of all time. Virtuoso, Joe Morello, incredible, Paul Desmond, beautiful and liquid, and Dave Brubeck, that sort of angular style. And this is what you have with great groups, is that you have an internal coherence that is imbalanced by these completely opposite approaches, right? I didn't expect this to go on for so long, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a break. So where am I? I am up at Dave Brubeck. I'll make a mental note. I'm going to stop this. I've got a lesson now, and then I will join you for the rest of my video. I'm back. My 500th episode. I've had to take a break. Right, shall we get back into it? So I believe I was at number 42 with Dave Brubeck. So we're going to move on to number 41. And I thought I need a few guilty pleasures on this list. I don't want to just, appear all cool. I need to put something on. Some of the bands on that I listen to all the time that I absolutely love. And there's one band that I really love, and they're always on in the car. And I always, if I put an album in the car, it stays there because I love them. And it's Jamiroquai. I grew up, as I became an adult in the music world and started playing, that acid jazz scene was very, very important, and Jamiroquai are the kings of that scene, and I think they're fantastic. At number 40, I have the Red Hot Chili Peppers. The Red Hot Chili Peppers are an important band for me. In the mid-80s, I'd become a bit of a jazz snob. I was listening to lots of GRP, sort of real noodly, fuse-hacking rubbish, and lots of ECM jazz, and I thought I was very clever. And then I felt like I just wasn't really feeling it anymore, and a couple of artists got me back into music, and or got me back into heavier music and more interesting music, and took me towards the avant-garde, believe it or not, and Red Hot Chili Peppers are one of those bands. Number 39, I have Stevie Wonder. I adore Stevie Wonder. That run of albums, started with Talking Book and probably running up to the Hotter Than July album. They're some of the greatest albums ever made, and there's Inner Visions and Songs in the Key of Life. They're just unbelievable albums, and what we have here is jazz rock, jazz fusion with vocals, and Stevie Wonder's such an incredible player. So that's who I have at number 39. I've got to stop saying that's who I have. I'm going to stop that. So a number where are we? Number 38, Charlie Parker, The Bird. What can we say? Is Charlie Parker the greatest improvising soloist ever? It's an interesting thought. Astonishing musician. When I heard him very young, I probably got into Charlie Parker when I was about 14 or 15. I thought he was astonishing. I was brought up listening to jazz, and my dad jazz listened to a whole bunch of different stuff. And I'd listen to like Paul Desmond, Sonny Rollins, I'd listen to Jerry Mulligan. They were incredible, and I understood it when I was a kid. And so when I heard Charlie Parker, I was like, well, this is astonishing. On every single level, it's astonishing. His voice is the voice of contemporary jazz. Number 37, above Charlie Parker, which just doesn't sound right to me, but above Charlie Parker, number 7, I have Cardiacs. The great punk, new wave, prog, avant-garde, electronic, every single style of music you could think of, all rolled up into some sort of insane version of The Residents, but shot through an English aesthetic. The genius of Tin Smith, the incredible musicians, Cardiacs, heavy going, but one of possibly the most underrated band in history. They really are. Number 36, I have James Brown. The godfather of soul, right? The inventor of the funk. The guy that really stopped funky soul music being chord progression based and made it riff based. He invented the scream in rock music. He is really, really important. It's James Brown. What can you say? What can I say about James Brown? When I played with Robert Plant back in the old days, we were booked to do a gig with James Brown I cannot think of anybody I could meet that was alive at that time that would have meant more to me than meeting James Brown. Really, that was a living legend. And then something happened. He was ill, or he went to prison or something, and he never did the gig. One of the biggest letdowns in my life, not getting to be on the same bill and share a dressing room. Maybe, I doubt that would have happened with James Brown. Number 35, Gentle Giant, Prog's Prog. The most incredible, real progressive rock, proper classical composition mixed with a rock band. They're funky, they're bizarre, they're just a wonderful band. It's heavy going again, but Gentle Giant I absolutely love. And in terms of the progressive rock bands in the 70s, they make a run of albums from their second album up to probably King for a Day, which is pretty awful. But up until then, every one of those albums is indistinguishably brilliant. Whether it's Octopus or, In a Glass House or Freehand or Power and Glory, they're all as good as each other. There's very few bands that have a run of such genius albums at such high quality. Number 34, Joni Mitchell. I know I told me Joni Mitchell when I was younger. I just didn't get it. I got Hejira and I got like Shadows on Light, and it was good, but it wasn't the Brecker Brothers. So loads of singing going on. I didn't like that. Sort of singing and loads of key changes, and I didn't understand it. And then I started to listen to the early stuff, and when I heard the early stuff and the beauty and simplicity of just her guitar and vocals, I then focused on the lyrics. She is one of the greatest lyricists of all time, one of the greatest songwriters. I think, Joni Mitchell could well be, in terms of this list, the greatest songwriter of the rock era. That's who I've got at number 34. Number 33, Al Di Meola. Al Di Meola, the Italian stallion. Mr. Alternate Pick. He recently had a heart attack, and he's okay. I'm on his Facebook, and 1 minute he's eating a pizza and hanging out in some beautiful Italian location. Next minute he's got a heart attack, and then the next minute he's back eating his pizzas and playing the guitar fast. What an incredible man. Number 32, the greatest of them all. Why have I got him down here? Because, it's my own personal preference. The most important musician of the 20th century, Louis Armstrong. If you want to see my best video on this channel, search Andy Edwards Louis Armstrong and watch that video. I think that's my best video, and that says what I feel about Louis Armstrong. Number 31, Bill Laswell. Producer, bass player, electronic musician, experimenter, Svengali, agitator. Bill Laswell's probably made more albums than I made videos. That's an achievement, that is. Incredible, and some of my favourite albums and some of the greatest fusion of the last 40 years comes out of that guy, Bill Laswell. He's not well at the moment. Let's hope he's okay. I'm sending out my beam out to you, Bill Laswell, because you are such an important musician. I don't think you've got the credit. If you had the credits that was due you, Bill, you would not be in the situation you are in the moment, trying to keep that incredibly legendary studio. Somebody with a pot of money, rather than spend it on some nonsense identity politics bloody art form that's saying the same thing that everyone said over and over again, go and give a ton of money to Bill Laswell, because that guy should be preserved, because he's one of the most important musicians of the last 40 years, and he's done more for bloody different minority groups and identity groups and starving musicians, and someone needs to go and help him. So that's what my opinion about Bill Laswell. Number 30, I have Rush. I love Rush. I've sat on Neil Peart's kit in Montreal Stadium just before they were about to play a gig. That's a story, I ain't going to tell it here. Number 29, Keith Jarrett. Keith Jarrett is an example for me of absolute incredible musicianship. Incredible, because not just because of the virtuosity, but because of the where he takes it, and that ever present need to push the boundaries of what he does as a musician. He's recently been very ill. He recently did a video for Rick Beato that was a shock. None of us have seen him, and it was lovely to see him and actually hear him play the piano. He's had a stroke, so he can only play with one hand, and it was still absolutely fantastic. And I really wish, Keith, make more albums, right? I think that limitation of the one hand, fused with your incredible musical mind, would make an album of absolute artistic worth. Really would. That's what I want from you, Keith. I know you're watching the channel. What's Andy got to say to me? Oh, he's having a go at me about making an album again. I don't know if we want to do that. Right, who have we got next to Keith Jarrett, number 28? We have Black Sabbath. I absolutely love Black Sabbath. They're funky, they're groovy, they're funny, and they're heavy. That's the classic combination for me. They invented heavy metal. They're from Birmingham. What more do you want? You know, they have incredible moustaches, except for Ozzy. There's one moment in the early 70s when they're just coked out of their mind. And obviously all the snorting, I don't know if it promotes, you know, facial hair growth, but they've all got these incredible black moustaches. They all look like Bob Carroll G's, you know, the guy that used to have Spit the Dog. And that's what I love about Black Sabbath. They know how to rock. You know, if I was going to form the ultimate metal band, they would all look like Bob Carroll G's, and then I would be a happy man. Right, so number 27, Steve Vai. That guy's been with me for 40 years. He changed my life when I heard Flexible back in the early 80s. I followed him all the way through. For me, he picks up the mantle of what Frank Zappa was doing, but he does it in his own way. And there's more beauty and romance in Vai's music than there is in Zappa's music, but there's also that aesthetic and commitment to music, and he's been able to create some of the most incredible music on the planet and be able to sell records and keep himself going. And it's people like him that keep the light alive for incredible music. He recently turned up on a Polyphia video, and I felt, you know, it's like all those like new modern guitarists with all their tattoos and their little spindly fingers and their doll-like looks, and they're doing all this tappy stuff that they've rehearsed. And then Vai comes on, and Vai has a humanity and spirit to his playing, which we are forgetting a little bit, you know. Not to knock the youth, but I always will knock the youth because I'm old, you know. Right, so where are we? We're on Steve Vai, weren't we? Where's he? Number 27. And we're getting there now. Number 26, I have Scott Henderson / Tribal Tech. Scott Henderson kept jazz rock alive in the 1980s with Tribal Tech. They were full on. It was like somewhere between Stevie Ray Vaughan and Weather Report. You know, that's what I think about Scott Henderson. As time has gone on, Scott Henderson is a guitar player. He's possibly my favourite guitarist. If you just want to listen to guitar solos, Scott Henderson, the guy, he's just got everything. He's got a little pinch of Holsworth, a little pinch of McLaughlin, a little pinch of Schofield. He's got a little pinch of Joe Zawinul, and a little pinch of Wayne Shorter, of Hendrix, of Richie Blackmore, you know, of Freddie King. He's got all of that in, and what does that all add up to? Not any of that. It sounds like Scott Henderson. I could recognise him as with one single note. You know, Scott Henderson is one of the great guitar players in history, as far as I'm concerned. And right next to Scott Henderson is a band that I know he loves. Even though he's a jazz virtuoso, I know Scott loves this band. The next one, number 25, is AC/DC. I've put, you know, I wouldn't want to represent this in the background. You can see Angus is in the back there. Look at him. That's the rear of Let There Be Rock. Let There Be Rock. What band could make an album with a song on it which is based upon Genesis, but equates that to the invention of rock music? That's prog, that is. Let There Be Rock is about as prog as AC/DC get. We love them, don't we? All love them. Number 24, Chick Corea, Return to Forever. Absolutely monumental. And I think Chick's output, you know, which goes from sort of free avant-garde jazz to classical string quartet, solo piano music, Latin music, Spanish music, classical music, all the way through to sort of beautiful jazz rock, heavy jazz rock, and in the case of him, to the Seventh Galaxy, almost heavy metal. What a guy. And all of that has Chick Corea's personal stamp. That's what we have on this list, is personalities, right? And that whimsy and like a fleet of fancy that you get with Chick Corea separates him from the Weather Reports and the John McLaughlins. He was an incredible guy. At number 23, we have Gong, right? I love the David Allen Gong. I love the Pierre Monlon Fusion Gong with Alan Holdsworth, and I love Shamal, which is stuck there in the middle. I loved it when David Allen went off and did Floating Anarchy, and I love what Carver Straby is doing with Gong now, because I love that sound. I absolutely love Gong. And there's two trio albums for me. One is the Flying Teapot Trilogy. They were masterpieces, and the other one is the Alan Holdsworth late 70s fusion albums, which would be Gazia's Espresso 2 and Time is the Key. I love those as well. Gong at number 23. At number 22, Van Halen. Right? I've got every single Van Halen album with Dave Lee Roth. I wasn't a fan of the Sammy Hagar Van Halen. As time's gone on, I've got into it more. You know, there is one great album there. Is that the For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge? That's a good album. But in terms of the Dave Lee Roth year, and in that is also contained Dave Lee Roth's album, Eaton and Smile and Skyscraper. I absolutely love them. If I could, Van Halen, you know, if I just had one rock band, you know, even more than Led Zeppelin, it could be Van Halen. I just love them. And number 21, Tony Williams and Tony Williams' Lifetime. You know, the great modern drummer, the guy that comes in and changes the face of drumming, turns it away from sort of rudimental snare drum stuff, voiced upon the kit, to someone who's playing the total kit, top to bottom, left to right, there to there, and you know, there to there and there to there. You know, incredible signature style, incredible virtuoso, and a vision for what jazz rock could be that he didn't quite fulfill. Tony Williams didn't quite fulfill, and that is compelling. The Alan Holdsworth Tony Williams Lifetime, one of the greatest fusion bands of the 70s. So that's who I've got at number 21. At number 20, Genesis. I love the Gabriel era Genesis, absolutely love them. I love the post-Gabriel Hackett Genesis. I think they're even stronger. You know, Trick of a Tale could well be their greatest album. I love Duke, I love Abacab, sorry, I love Three Sides Live. I even like Genesis, that album that came out in the early 80s with songs like That's All. I was in a covers band, we just had to play That's All. It's an incredible song when you play it. You know, there's all sorts of stuff going on that song, which is very great, incredible pop music. You know, prog fans, can't stand it that Genesis changed from a prog band to a pop band. But in terms of a pop band, they were a great pop band and they were a great prog band. And we love them very much. And there's a sound of the English aesthetic in Genesis music that's compelling as soon as I hear it. Right, at number 19, I have John Scofield. Right, who emerged in Billy Cobham's band in the 1970s. He played on that incredible Live on Tour album with the terrible cover that I've talked about recently. He then moves into Miles's band. He's incredible in Miles Davis' band. I think, you know, Decoy, Star People, they're probably I think Decoy in terms of mainstream Miles Davis albums going to have a very soft spot for Aura, but I think we take Aura out of it. But I think once you're taking that out, the greatest Miles Davis album from the 80s is probably Decoy. Made brilliant by Scofield, was all over it, and then he comes out in the mid to late 80s with that quartet with Dennis Chambers, Gary Granger. Unbelievable. You know, there wasn't that much great fusion in the 80s, and a lot of it the great stuff came from John Scofield. I love his approach, absolutely do. One of my favourite guitarists. I don't think he's rated high enough. I don't think he is. I think, you know, it's like, if you look at the sort of popularity of someone like Pat Metheny, I don't understand why Scofield doesn't get it. I think it's because it's more funkier. I think Pat Metheny managed to pull in some sort of almost like a new age audience to his stuff. Right, shall we keep going? Number 18, Herbie Hancock. Groundbreaking in Miles's quartet. Groundbreaking on his own in the 60s, some of the greatest jazz albums of the 60s. Right. He is an early pioneer of jazz rock, but it's not jazz rock, it's jazz funk. He brings the funk in. By the time he gets to Headhunters, he's gone through the Mohandishi band, which is probably the greatest exponent of post-British, post-bitches brew, post-bitches brew electric jazz. It's got nothing to do with Britain, Andy. You can't bring Britain in here. I could be very, you know, what's the word? This is going on for too long. Right, so patriotic. I can be very patriotic, but you cannot lay the responsibility of Herbie Hancock's geniuses on Britain's. You know, you can't do that. Sorry, you just can't. Herbie Hancock, who then with the Headhunters really, you know. That's the great statement of funky jazz rock fusion, and I think Headhunters albums are the funkiest albums ever made. But another guy that gives me a run for money is number 70, Billy Cobham. My Lord and Master, Billy Cobham. You know, that's why I'm here. That's why I started playing the drums. You know, defines what jazz rock drummers in the Mavish Nutshell, and then on Spectrum brings in that bit of funky R&B, and him and Herbie, you know, they turn fusion funky. They're the ones to blame. Number 16, we're nearly there now. My throat's hurting, this is going on for so long. You're not still watching, are you? God, this is going on and on. Never do a top 100 again. It's just... I should have just read them out, shouldn't I? What am I going to do? I'll put this list. I'm going to put this list in the comments. I don't normally put the list in the comments, but I will put the list in the comments. But I'll put it after the videos come out, and so because I won't get the views if people, you know, they only come here for the nose and they say, well, what's going to be on the list? You know what's going to be on the list. You've been watching the channel, haven't you? All the bands I talk about on the channel, you fool. Right. You're not a fool. I'm only joking. I'm trying to make you laugh. You know, I'm losing the will to live here. If I'm losing the will to live and I'm doing it, you must be losing the will to live. What have we got? Number 16, The Police, Sting, Andy Summers, Stuart Copeland. You know, progressive rap musicians, jazz rock musicians all come together, pretend to be a punk band, bring in a reggae influence, which isn't a reggae influence. It's a bonkers Stuart Copeland influence mixed with Andy Summers' incredible restructuring of rhythm guitar playing and Sting's sublime, incredible songwriting, and you have possibly the greatest band of all time, better than the Beatles, better than Led Zeppelin, The Police. Number 15, The Queen, Kate Bush, the Queen of Prog. We love Kate Bush. I absolutely love Kate Bush. I can't tell you how much I love Kate Bush. I can't tell you, and I won't tell you because I'm going to move on. Number 14, Yes, Yes. I'm not just saying yes. I'm talking about the band Yes. Right? Yes, they are prog, aren't they? Yes are prog. More than any other band, they are prog. I absolutely love Yes. I love all these bands because it's my list of my 100 favourite bands. So when I say I love the band that I'm talking about, it's so bloody obvious, isn't it, really? And I've spoken so much about Yes on this channel. What can I say about Yes? I'll say one thing. Right now, which is the best Yes? Is it Yes? Or is it John Anderson with the Band of Geeks? And I know some of the Band of Geeks watch this channel. So if you're one of the Band of Geeks and you watch this channel, I think your band's better than the Actual Yes. Better than Actual Yes. Should call yourself not Actual Yes, but better. Or you can have that quote from me. Oh, I like to put the cat amongst the pigeons, don't I? Yes, he's John Anderson. I don't care what anyone says. Yes, he's John Anderson. It's that voice. I fly on in a bed. Oh, I'm going mad now, aren't I? This is driving me mad. It's like being in the desert. I'm walking through, you know, this sort of desert of music here. What number were we at to? I can't remember what I was talking about. Who was I talking about then? It was Yes, wasn't it? There, number 14. I'm nearly at the top 10. Number 13, Jeff Beck. We love Jeff Beck. What a guitar player. The best of those sort of classic 60s London guitarists. You know, the best. If you don't count Jimi Hendrix, who's coming up in a minute. And also, maybe not Carlos Santana, I've got number 12. So at number 12, I've got Carlos Santana. I've got Santana, the band Santana. You know what my favourite album by Santana is? Amigos. It's not Caravanserai. It's not Welcome. It's not even Lotus. It's Amigos. I just love Amigos. Dance, sister, dance. I love the way you move. I love to watch you dance, sister, dance. I love it. That's all I can say about it. I can do a poor, you know, a cappella rendition of Dance, Sister, Dance. I just love it. And when it takes off, and it's almost like Hawkwind Orb Gong X, when it takes off, Tom Costa does that synthesized solo. Brilliant stuff. Number 11, I'll get Jimi Hendrix. Jimi Hendrix. You know, did rock music ever produce anybody better than him? What a force of nature. Comes out in 1967, he's dead 3 years later. And 50 years later, 55 years later, whatever, those that know that legacy is as powerful now that it was then. But I do feel amongst the younger people, they don't get it. I think that level of self-expression doesn't chime well in today's modern culture, does it? Number 10, I got Led Zeppelin. I love Led Zeppelin. I got into Led Zeppelin when I was a kid. I think they opened a door for me when I was listening to all these different rock bands. There's just something magical and stately about Led Zeppelin that no other rock band has. I loved them so much that my love of Zeppelin sort of took me on a journey through life, and it's weird how, years later I ended up, playing over 100 gigs with Robert Plant and becoming a tiny part of that legacy, which I'm very proud of. So it is a tiny part. It's a very tiny part. I boosted myself up then too much, didn't I? Trying to put myself in the part of the Led Zeppelin legacy. Next minute I'll be trying to prove to you that Herbie Hancock's British. Right, number 9, Pat Metheny. What a body of work. I love Pat Metheny. It's sublime stuff. I'm going to say that about every single after. You can't just say I love them and then move on. What's the point in that? That's not a video. That's not entertainment. Some bloke says, here's my list of favourite artists. And then he goes, at number 10, an artist I like. At number 9, an artist I like. I know that's what all the other YouTubers do, but I don't do it. So stop doing it. Go, stop it, Andy. Right. So you got to say something cool about Pat Metheny. Pat. Here in the UK, we have a thing called a cow pat. And a cow pat is a cow's poo. And I've never liked the name Pat. Patrick I like, but Pat I don't. Also, pat is what you do to an animal. You pat it. And I've never thought that Pat was a good name for Pat Metheny. I don't think cow pat, which is the picture I have when I hear his name, is the right vision to have when you listen to his music. Not at all. I don't know whether this has held him back. And the other thing that's interesting about Pat Metheny, he has really, for a guy that's like nearly 70, he has really kept the long hair going. Now, if I got to a point, if you go a few years back, you'll see me sitting there looking like some, demented prog wizard. And at some point I thought, I don't want to look like Dumbledore anymore. And I've cut it all off. And now I have this sort of, grey quiff that I now sport. But Pat Metheny he has kept it going. And when you've got dark hair as Pat Metheny has, and you start going grey, you can't start dyeing it black. Not if you've got long hair. You just can't do it, because you'll end up looking like that Dorian off Birds of a Feather. This is all British humour, sorry about this. So you have to go a bit blonde, don't you? And he's gone blonde recently. Pat Metheny's a blonde. So I've said something that no one else is going to say about Pat Metheny. Who have I got number 8? King Crimson. I recently did a video on the new documentary, The Court of the Crimson King. I think it's one of my best videos. I used some of the techniques that Fripp used, and they bloody worked. And by the end of that video, I really do not know what I'm talking about. It's quite interesting to watch me get to the point of just questioning my very existence. But you see, I'm back. 500th episode. I'm back here, and I do not care if I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't care about that realisation. Revelations mean nothing to me. Number 7, Weather Report. Lovely Weather Report. Right, everyone thinks I don't like Weather Report. I got every single Weather Report album. I love them all. It's just like there's certain albums I like more than others, and I'm not so keen on the Jacko Peter Erskine version of it. I'm not. That's not the one on Heavy Weather. It's Alex Acuna. I'm just not keen on that group. Everyone raves about 8:30, and when I listen to Live and Unreleased, when I listen to that with Alex Acuna drumming, that's an incredible band. Now I'm laughing to myself because I realise as I'm going up this list, these artists are so great that I am saying bad things about them. That's all I can possibly say is criticising my idols. When I did play with Robert Plant, I can remember we did a gig somewhere in Greece, and one of the biggest Led Zeppelin fans in the world was brought in to meet Robert, and it was so much for him to meet this sort of person that had lived in his imagination for all these years. And he started to say how wonderful Robert was, and then he switched to, he realised that he was coming off just like a fool, and it embarrassed him. So then he started to criticise Robert, and that was even worse. And then he realised what he's done, and then he burst out crying and walked away. And as he walked away, we didn't know what to do, because he'd walked up to us. There's about 10 of us in this group, and he'd walked up to us and done this little speech and gone this, and probably ruined his whole life in front of his hero. and we walked away crying. And as he walked away, we didn't know what to do, so we all gave him a round of applause, and it stuck in my mind. And this is what happens when you come up against absolute greatness. What can you say about the man that's at number 6 on this list? The one I have championed on this channel, that I know all the other Fusion fans don't want to rate as high as I rate, but I rate him as the greatest, the best. The Charlie Parker of jazz, rock and jazz fusion, Mr. Jan Hammer. No, I'm not worthy to talk about any of these now. Jan Hammer, the virtuoso jazz pianist, is an equal to Jad, equal to Zawinul, he's equal to all of these, believe me, he is. He's an absolute monster. You know why I know he's a monster? Because John McLaughlin got him in the Mavish Duction. You know how many pianists couldn't have handled that gig in 1971 and what was required of the keyboardist? What was required? Jan Hammer just eats it alive. You know, like, you know, I could play these chords and I can play these chords in like 1916, no problem. I can, you know, I will take the sound of the keyboard and change it. I will use a Moog to bend the notes and create microtones so I sound like an Indian musician, so I can compete with you violinists. And I'm going to do that, and by doing that I'm going to create the signature sound of jazz rock. Jan Hammer at number 6. At number 5, Allan Holdsworth. Allan Holdsworth, you're at number 5 on this list. You know who you're going to be beaten by, Alan, if you're watching. You're going to be beaten by 4 musicians that are just absolute legends. I remember this is my list as well. What can I say about Allan Holdsworth? I wish he'd experienced the outpouring of love and respect that has emerged in the last few years since he's died. This has been spurred on, and I've spoken so much about Allan Holdsworth, but there is a stable now on YouTube of people who have never heard Allan Holdsworth, who are guitarists, good guitarists, reacting to seeing him. There's 2 mega reactions, I think. There's 2 things that change your life, will change my life. One was hearing Mavish Duction as a band, and hearing what they were doing as a band. The other was hearing Allan Holdsworth as an instrumental soloist. Those 2 are the things, those 2 events are the things, and you have to be ready for it. And if you don't appreciate Holdsworth and you think it's a bit boring, you're not ready for it. Don't put it in the comments. Don't go on Holdsworth and go, yeah, I can tell he's technically very good, but I think it's all a bit boring. You're just showing your ignorance. Sorry. Andy, you're such an elitist. I am. You know why? Because art is elitism. Right, shall we move on? Number 4, I have St. John Coltrane. You know, well, don't say you love John Coltrane. What are you going to say about John Coltrane then? Come on, you nearly, how many, we're going over the hour now. Number 4, John Coltrane. What can I say that I haven't said about John Coltrane? I've said everything I can about John Coltrane, but I shouldn't be able to say that because he represents the infinite. He represents multi-dimensionality in music, linked to an expression of the infinite. I haven't said that about him before. He's an absolute virtuoso, and a lot of musicians are impressed by his virtuosity. The speed, the fluency, the harmonic knowledge, you know, running through billion scales at the same time. He wrote Giant Steps and he played it, and it's an astonishing feat, you know, and it changed the history of music and all that sort of stuff. And that's what everyone seems to respect. For me, it's in his sound. There's something in his sound. It does not represent spiritual unity to me. It represents a soul in torment, searching. It's the search, and it's a primal scream that goes back to the beginning of time. That's what John Coltrane is to me. These guys can grow up in America, you know, black musicians, experience all that sort of racism. You know, Coltrane joins the army and he's playing in a big band jazz group that are playing sort of Fletcher Henderson big band arrangements. To have come through that, you know, to be around Miles Davis and Charlie Parker in New York with the bebop things happening. But that lights a fire But for these musicians to then take that and move it to the point where they're making records like Ascension and Into Space and A Love Supreme and Meditations, that's some travel, isn't it? And if he hadn't died in 1967 at the age of 41, I'm 55 years old, right? You know, John Coltrane is like, he's 41 when he died. What would he have done if he'd have carried on? I really believe that the whole landscape of music would be different now if he'd have lived. I think that free jazz he was doing was like you built a nuclear reactor and you switch it on, and the sparks and all that energy, you know, that comes in the start is free jazz. I wonder where he would have taken it. You hear where it could have gone through people like John McLaughlin. You hear where it could have gone through people like Jimi Hendrix, and of course all the free jazz musicians that came in afterwards. But I'm not on about copying him. I'm not on even about his sort of scalar approach to improvisation. I'm going to watch it because I am now talking at length about John Coltrane. Once I lit that little light, I could now talk about him for an hour. At number 3, I have his associate, his mentor, Miles Davis. I've spoken a lot about Miles Davis on this channel. I often get criticised for not putting him on lists. I don't put Miles on lists. You know, 10 greatest jazz rock musicians, I ain't going to put Miles on there. It demeans him to put him on the list, do you not understand? It demeans him. He's above it. He's looking down on it. That list is something that he looks down upon. Right? And Miles is like, Coltrane and Miles, what a team. What a team. That team creates the biggest jazz album in history, Kind of Blue. But that team is like chalk and cheese. It's this binary that I talk about in music. And Miles understands that, and he always pits himself, he's always at his best when he's pitting himself up with almost like the tangential opposite of who he is and what he represents. Miles Davis is like yin and yang. Everything that you think about Miles Davis, he also contains the opposite. There's a huge masculine energy, there's a huge feminine energy in there. There's darkness, but there's also light. All these things are embodied within that musician. And again, like Coltrane, it's in his sound. It's absolutely in his sound. And the mournful quality that transfers any tune, both Coltrane and Miles have as musicians. You could take Food Glorious Food. You could take a tune like that from Oliver. Food Glorious Food. You can take a tune like that. Now you play it in your head as Miles playing it. And as soon as you hear that, he's great. He's making great art of it. Well, think of Coltrane playing it in 6/8. And you hear that it's I can't sing it, I haven't got it in my voice. It's that mournful quality that makes everything sound heavyweight. Right, number 2, I have Frank Zappa. This list is my list. I think that Miles Davis and John Coltrane are greater musicians than the musicians I have at 1 and 2. But in terms of my life and my list and my and it's my football, I have to put Frank Zappa up there. You know, I have a lot of Coltrane albums. I have a lot of Miles Davis albums. But I have loads and loads of Frank Zappa albums. And that guy's influenced me in so many different ways. Absolutely so. And he represents something in music. He really does. He represents composition. He is the great composer for me. And in terms of being the great player, the master musician is the guy I have at number 1. And if you know me, you know what's at number 1. It's John McLaughlin and the Mahavishnu Orchestra. Zappa and John McLaughlin. And again, they represent two opposites, like Coltrane and Miles. And all these 4 acts are related. I sit there thinking about the relationships between these 2 bands. I want to know, is there a key musician that played with John McLaughlin, Frank Zappa, Miles Davis and Coltrane? Now I know Jack DeJohnette played with Miles, Coltrane and John McLaughlin a lot. Well, he played with Coltrane a couple of times. Is there a musician that played with those four? Can you think of one? I'm going to leave this video now, which is possibly the longest video I've made. Well, I have just done the 100 greatest artists of all time. My 100 greatest artists of all time, but as far as I'm concerned, that is it. There we go. The 100. Right? I'm not going to annotate this video. I ain't going to find 100 photographs and stick them in play. It'll take me hours. Right? So you'll just have to watch it raw. It's the 500th episode, and as a tribute, this is how I can justify it to myself. As a tribute to me, I'm going to do it old school style, where the camera's switched on and you just see what you see, and you get what you get, and you like what you like. If you don't like it, sling your hook. Oh, my back's hurting now. This is why I'm sitting over at the side. My back's hurting. I've been here for hours. What time is it now? What day is it? That's the longest list I've ever done, and I'm pretty sure this video is going to be coming up to the bloody 2-hour mark. But it's the 500th episode. It's the 500th episode. So I'm done there. I've done that list. I'm going to switch you off, computer. Right, I'll put my list away. What can I talk about? Because I'm going up to the 2-hour limit. We've got 20 minutes. Let's talk about the YouTube. This YouTube has changed my life. You do know that, don't you? Back in 2021, when we were in the midst of COVID, and I was stuck in this garage all day long trying to teach online to my students and doing a bit of recording, and every now and then I do a few YouTube videos. And actually, if you go back and look, I actually start doing these sort of drum tuition videos. I sat with my practice pad talking, and one day, you know, I'd been watching Sea of Tranquility, and I noticed that they were doing these top 10s. I actually want to know a little bit more about Gentle Giant, and I'd watched Sea of Tranquility, Pete Bardot's channel. You know, he's to blame. I thought I'm going to do a top 10 Mahavishnu Orchestra albums because I know that band really well, and I did that. I think the Sea of Tranquility guys also asked me to do a couple of top 10s with them, and I think that just lifted the channel up. I think the fact that I was talking about progressive rock and my tiny fan base in the progressive, that lifted the channel up. And suddenly I noticed that this sort of talking to the camera video was doing a lot better. And so I you know, about a month later, I do a weather report one, and it had a similar success. Not the views I get now, but there was. I thought this is quite interesting. And at the time, I'd put all my own personal creativity into my Bandcamp. I'd spent like about 10 years on my Bandcamp, recorded all these albums, and nobody was listening. And I'd check in once a month, and I go, oh, so you've had 7 listens. So to be getting, say, 250 views on a video, I thought this is really brilliant. It's not my music, but you know, my music is made because I love music. That's why I make music, because I love music. And I felt that these videos were coming from the same place. You know, I knew I wasn't one of those nerdy know-it-alls that's got like 10,000 albums and knows all the facts. I became very aware that I'd been a working musician and I'd been a music teacher, and it was those things I thought, I'm going to talk about this music here that's behind me. I'm going to talk about that, but I want to bring in certain themes, and that started to creep in. As the channel developed, you start to get a little bit of knockback, and back then I was just doing top 10 videos and people would always moan about stuff, and I knew that the prog audience was a bit anal retarded, a bit OCD, you know, a bit fussy. They like their boundaries, they like their rules, and so you get a lot of questions like that. And the video that changed this site, if you want to know, I think it was, I did a video called the 10 greatest live progressive rock albums. And I got so not frustrated. I had a sort of, I've always had a stupid sense of humour. And at the end of that video, I think I'd done enough videos to just, I started talking. I think as I started talking, I was pretty sure I was going to just delete that bit off. I just kept talking to the camera. And I started talking just nonsense and just taking the mickey out of the very fans who watch this channel, who were a masochistic lot because they loved it. And in that video I said, and it was like really poking fun at the whole idea of doing top 10 videos, which is a pretty silly idea. I decided to do the top 10 biscuits. That changed this channel. And from then on, I've been exploring something which I think is entirely silly and profound at the same time, and I find it very compelling. I've become aware that I've spent a lifetime doing music, thinking about music, teaching music, and making music, right? And I think I've got a natural philosophical approach to what I do. I question what I do. I want to understand what I do and why I do it. And in there, I know some profound truths, because this is the serious bit about my channel. I really believe that music's important. I really believe art's important, and I love all sorts of art and music and films. I'm a person who loves that, and I'm creating stuff all the time, not just music, but all sorts of different things. That's how I've spent my life, and I think it's really, really important. But the stuff that was more important than Mozart, or more important than Shakespeare to me, it was Herbie Hancock, it was John McLaughlin, it was the films of Powell and Pressburger, it was the films of Stanley Kubrick, it was encyclopedias, it was like almanacs. When I was a kid, I was a big fan of the 500 greatest films of all time. I have that in me as well. But the importance of art, and for me, the importance of art in regulating mental health, because art is the arbiter of aesthetics, and aesthetics is the mother of morality. That is my view. Right, you don't have to agree with it, but that's my view, and I'm going to argue it from this channel. That's the serious bit, right? And I think, as John McLaughlin said, it is only through spontaneity that you can truly know yourself, all right? Once you've got that as a big stew, you cannot access all this stuff consciously. It's your lived experience in true term. I hate that term, but your lived experience is there. It's in you. That's who you are, and your lived experience is based upon who you are as well, the essence of who you are, and you could only know that through facing this. People say facing. When I talked about the Robert Fripp video, we talked about facing the void. Or as Sri Chinmoy would have said to John McLaughlin and Carl Santana, nothingness. That there's nothingness in eternity, and you have to face that. You have to open yourself up to it. But I think it's the line between time and space. It's the moment that we're actually in. You have to try and address the actual place you're at. That is what art does, essentially. And the way a composer does it is they have that experience when they face that thing, which I'm not going to say what it is fully, but I've tried to. But when you face that thing, then you can write it down on a piece of paper, and it stores that moment. And again, you've got this moment in time frozen. It's a bringing together of these two things. And I think this is the fundamental message of my channel. Anyway, this Talking Heads format on YouTube, where I've just got a camera, there's no edit, so I'm just talking into the camera. There's limits to that, and I'm interested in the limits, right? I'm interested in the fact that you give yourself a set of parameters, aesthetic parameters, it's like a top 10, or you're going to talk about, say, Chuck Berry, or whatever it is. And then I've had to learn to do it. It's exactly the same as composing or improvising. It comes from the same place. You have to learn to get on the wave of now, of the eternal now, and surf. So you get to this point where I'm at right now, which I have not got a clue what I'm about to say next, but I'm saying it. I'm going into a world where I don't know what I'm about to say the same as you. I don't even think it's my opinions, right? What it is me as a being in this mystery called existence, putting myself in a situation where I start to talk, and whoever I am, however wretched and stupid, or however clever or experienced or lacking experience or whatever it is, I've had to learn how to, it's like a skill, to be able to open your mouth and let that come out when you're aware that you're on a knife edge for the whole time. A knife edge which you do not know where you're going. I had no idea I was about to say this. This is a fascinating thing. This is something that is at the heart of all creativity. And I find this compelling. I find doing this compelling. And I find I've learnt stuff. And my view of art and music has been really refined by doing this, talking to you lot, and then you genius people, because my followers, when you look at 17,000 people there, you know, yeah, I got 17,000 followers, but Mr. Beast has got millions, but they're all idiots. They're just idiots that like to see something blown up that they just press subscribe because they thought it's cool. You lot aren't like that. And every night I sit down and I go through the comments. And the comments refines my point of view. And some people turn around and go, oh, he's backtracking. Yeah, believe it, I am. I put an idea out there and I pursue it. And I think for myself, the excitement is refining my understanding of aesthetics. And aesthetics is the part of our existence that deals with quality, and it's the one that's hard to pin down. We got quantity down, that's what we have science for. We can measure stuff and elucidate truth from measurement, but quality is something else. And the only way we can really understand quality, which is this thing that slips in through your fingers, is through art. And I believe not just making art, but talking about art. Because what art does is someone has an experience and they don't filter that experience, and then they're able to record it in whatever the medium is that their art is in. And then somebody comes up and they look at their moment, and it's not just that they see the moment, they see the moment from their point of view. The subjective becomes objective. The snake bites its tail at that point. And lots of people do that. With successful art, it's compelling. So lots of people do that, and then they have the same reaction, and they start to think, they start to talk, and they start to act in a different way. Some of them make new art which is based upon that art, but other people just think about it and talk about it. And then the next thing, you could be chatting to your friend and they're in a real situation, a moral situation, and that art has set you up to do exactly what I'm saying now, and you're trying to help them, but you don't know what you're about to say. And as you speak and you open your mouth, out comes these things that you don't know what they are. And if they're good, they help. And that is where the morality starts. Now, I have always said aesthetics is linked to morality, and I've never been able to explain it. You know why? Because I didn't know. But here I am 2 years late, 2 years, it feels like 2 years. 2 hours later, I've just gone through the 100 artists I like, and that's got me into a certain state, and then I've thought, because I'm anal retentive, I thought I want to try and get up to at least near 2 hours. This will be the longest video, which is a great way of celebrating my 500 episode. And in that, I thought I'll talk and see where it goes. And now, I've learnt this the same as you. I haven't learnt it. Is it true? I don't know whether it's true, but what I've just said is that art changes us. It changes us in a way. It's going to change our moment. It's going to change us in that eternal now moment. And that communication, which is going on between all of us. You know, the appreciation of beauty. Oh, my daughter's coming now. Just as I was going to get really profound, my daughter's coming. I've been here for too long. Hello. I'm on camera. Okay. What do you want? You hungry?
No, do you have a heater?
You know I've got a heater.
Do you have it here?
No, I haven't got a heater. I've got your own personal heater. Okay. And you can't keep it on forever because it will eat up my electricity bill. It's gone cold here in the UK. We used to it being warm. I've had to go and buy heaters. I've got a nice heater for my studio in here. Just as I was getting so airy-fairy and highfalutin, real life came in. And my daughter's come out into the garden, across the garden to my studio, clutching an iPhone and a hot water bottle. That's her experience now. And my morality is saying, shut up, Andy, and go get her warm. Make her some toast. She's not very well. She's got a cold at the moment. I've got a cold as well. I thought I was going to be able to just about get through these videos. I feel really rough. That's why I'm wrapped up in a coat and I've got a scratchy throat. Don't feel well. That's where I'm at. That's my moment right now. To all of those who supported me on my channel, I thank you very much. This is making me a bit of money that I really need at the moment because my personal life is going through certain things that I can't say, but there it is. So I appreciate the fact that I'm making some money just for sitting here and chatting, which I would do anyway. You know, I love that. And the people who support, especially my patrons, my lovely patrons. And there's a hardcore patron that they're always there. And we get together on Zoom once a week and I post the video up and they have become friends, you know. And this week I post up just an excerpt from one of those meetings from Doran, who is a Jewish Israeli, just telling us about what was going on. Not political, just real people reacting to whatever's going on around them. That's what we need. We need freedom of expression and we need freedom of thought, which means freedom of speech. That's what we need to save us at the moment. It's what we always need to save us. You know, we need to listen. We need to listen to people's other points of view and we need to shift our points of view. That's what we need to do. And you need to argue as hard as you can when you're in that position. But you've got to do it with a sense of love. You need to be able to have if you can't have an argument with someone where they fundamentally, I've got an itchy shoulder, where they fundamentally, you disagree with them, they really are frustratingly wrong. And if you can't have a discussion with them, but then be able to look them in the eyes and go, that is still my fellow man or my fellow woman or my fellow child. And at the end of it, then be able to put your arms around that person, hug them and say, I love you. Right, now let's go and have a cup of tea. Let's go and look at the same sky and the same trees and let's all get on. Because you need both opinions. There is nothing in life that is cut and dried. Nothing. Nothing at all. Right? And there is always an ounce of truth in everybody's opinion. Even the most disgusting, horrible, racist, Nazi, you know. You have to be able to look in to that person. And I think I'm coming up to the last few minutes. I'm going to finish up with this. I've been in arguments on the internet this week about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And I think what Hamas has done is appalling. And that has coloured and changed my opinion about the situation. And although Israel have done all these terrible things and everyone's arguing against me, there's a level of just degrading, disgusting awfulness about what Hamas did that weekend. And I find it awful because I know that it's coming from an ideology where they cannot shift and they cannot question. They cannot do this, and this is why that is so awful. And once you ideologically position yourself like that, you're not that far away from sticking Jews into gas chambers or cutting Jews' babies' heads off or whatever's gone on, which is absolutely awful. And I rail against that. But inside that is the kernel of truth that we do have to think, what has brought those people to walk into Israel and do that? What is the kernel of truth in there? Right? It doesn't mean we forgive them, but we have to search for that grain of truth. The dot that's in the yin and yang spinning circle, you have to see that dark and face that darkness which is in not just us, but within every idea that's out there. Right, I'm pretty sure I'm over the 2 hour mark now, so I've fulfilled my thing. And I've said all that. You know about liking the video and subscribing. You all know about that, don't you? You know about ringing the notification bell. You know about, what else do you know about? You know about all sorts of things. And tell me in the comments. Right, I'm done. Oh, my back's hurting. I'm going to have a peanut butter sandwich now. A nice cup of coffee. I had all the pork pies yesterday. I can't have any more of those. My dog's come out now. Do you want to? Oh, he's walking. If I could capture Mojo the dog, that would really be an excellent thing. Come here, camera. Let's see if I can fit. What's he doing out there? Right, let's just turn it round and see if I can just. There's my garden. You saw it the other day. And there's my dog. He's come out for a sniff. And we all know what that dog has come out to do, don't we? Let's zoom in on him. Mojo, that's Mojo the dog. There he is, come out. And he is considering, see, he doesn't want to go down the garden to do certain business that he's got in mind because there's been a badger there, you see. And he doesn't like it. So he's now having to consider soiling our patio, and I won't put you through that, but that is what is going on right now, and that's my dog, and I'm going to cut it off before it gets obscene and YouTube ban me. I don't want that to happen. Not for having a video of a dog doing. Oh, sorry. There we go. I didn't cut it off in time. 500th episode ends with the dog urinating against the bush. Thanks for watching. See you on the next video.